Okay, so this week is Parshas Akev, which actually means because. It says Akev, the words of the Torah are actually Akev, V'haya Akev tishma'on es hamishpatim ha'ela. Because you listen to these commandments, Ushmarta v'asitem osam, and you've listened and you kept them, Ushmor Hashem Elokecha lach es habris v'es hachesed asher nishba lavatecha. So God is going to keep his promise to you, and he's going to love you and bless you and make you very many. And the word akev, because, is also related to the word heel, akev, right?
Okay.
Akev, thank you. The heel. So it's because and akev, and heel. And this is to let us know that there's the reasons why. Well, there's a few different explanations of why it relates to the heel. One is that it tells us that the heel is the lowest part of the body. You know, sometimes we're so involved with Judaism in the important things, in the head part, in the heart part, the things that are important, like the high holidays, like the things like Shabbat maybe. But when it comes to the day-to-day dealings, when it comes to our business dealings, or how we are with our friends, or how we are with others, maybe in those areas we're not so careful. Those are kind of the heel parts. It's not so important. And the Torah is telling us God specifically wants us to do those heel parts, akev, because you listened, because you let Judaism permeate all aspects of yourself, not just the heart, the head parts, not just the heart parts, not the parts that you think are important, but all aspects of yourself, even so much as the things that you think are the least sensitive part, like the heel. Even those things you felt were important and you were careful with. And really, we don't know what's an important mitzvah and a not important mitzvah. Every mitzvah is a form of connection to God. Everything that we do is a form of connection to God. If God commanded us to do it, whether it's a big one, whether it's one of those biggies, or a really little one, this is how we connect. This is how we connect to God. And God is telling us specifically, because you did those things that many people trample on with your foot, but you listen to it, that is why I'm going to remember you, and I'm going to remember the Brit that I made with your forefathers, and this is a reference really to Mashiach. Also, the heel, akev, is an allusion to ikvot de Mashiach, the heels of Mashiach. We say we're on the heels of Mashiach. You can actually hear Mashiach's footsteps almost. You feel it. You feel it in the air. You feel that it's coming with the crazy world that we live in, with the things that are happening around us. It's either I don't know what, or it's Mashiach's coming. You can feel Mashiach in the air. You feel that vibration almost. You feel it's coming any moment. And this is a reference to really our generation. We are the Ikvos de Mashiach. We are that generation. And we are that generation that is careful with these things. We're the generation that is careful with not trampling on these mitzvot, but making sure that our connection with God is something that we hold dear. Because if you think about it, when you think about a relationship, the things that we do in a relationship, it's not the big things that are always so important. It's a lot of those little things done on a day-to-day basis. It's the kind word that you say, the little notes that you leave, the little gestures that you do, that I bought you something when I was in the store, those little things that we do for one another, whether it's our spouses or whether it's people who are around us, those relationships that we're in that are meaningful relationships, it's those little things that create the intimacy, that create the meaning, that create the connection. Not the big things always. The big things, you do once and then it's finished and done with. But it's those little things on a day-to-day basis that show our connection. And that's what it's referring to here about those little things, those heel mitzvot, those little mitzvot. Even in those things we talk to God during the day. It's not only about going to shul and davening and praying the 3 prayers of the day, or going on Yom Kippur on the big day. It's talking to God, allowing God into our lives, welcoming God into our lives, making God a part of our lives, doing those small things in our day-to-day, because God, I know this is something that you would want me to do. So this one's for you. It's those things that make our connection with God so meaningful. And one of the connections that we do that is mentioned in this week's Torah portion is actually the mitzvah of the mezuzah. And as I was preparing, every Torah portion has so much wealth in it. There's just so much to talk about. I never know, which part should I talk about? Which part should I focus on this week? And I'm looking through the Torah portion, and I'm like, I don't know. There's so many aspects of so many things that I could focus on. And then I got to close to the end, and it was about mezuzah. And I said, I want to talk about something practical, like a mezuzah. Let me talk about mezuzot. And then I did a little bit more research, and what I found was absolutely fascinating, how important it is for our time. I was reading a sikha of the Rebbe, a talk from the Lubavitcher Rebbe, that was all about mezuzah on this Torah portion, printed on this Torah portion, and it was from 1974. And I'll tell you why. Because in 1974, there was a terrible tragedy in a place in Israel called Maalot.
I remember that.
A massacre. You remember that?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. The school.
The
Yes,
school. Oh, you
yes.
all know about it. So
Yes.
I didn't know about it. I was a little kid then. I didn't know when I'm reading it.
You were born.
I was born. I won't tell you how old I was.
Okay.
And
Yeah,
I'm
I
reading
remember.
it, and
Oh my
it's like the familiarity of what's happening to today was like crazy. So this is what happened. There was a group of school children who were going on a trip. This was I think it was in May. It was in 1974, and the children were going to go, I guess it was a reward or whatever at the end of this. They were going to have a trip to Maalot. They were a school in Sfat, and they were going to Maalot, and they were going with, I think, two school buses plus a van. And as they were getting closer to Maalot, they had a whole itinerary planned, and they were planning to sleep in the, out in the air, in the open, under the beautiful skies, in some wadi or some kind of place where they were hiking. And they got message from the security of Israel that the intelligence heard that there were possibly terrorists that were planning on infiltrating from Lebanon, Palestinian terrorists who were going to come in from Lebanon and do some kind of terror attack. So when they heard that, they called the principal, and the principal said, instead of just hiking out in the open and sleeping out in the open under the sky, go to a school instead. Go to a school, so it's a more, you're not just out there in the open, but go to the school. And the school that they went to was called actually Nativ Meir. And this was where they were going to sleep the night and then continue the next day on the various parts of their trip that was planned. And that's what they did. Now, meanwhile, a group of terrorists came in. I think there were 3 terrorists who came in from Lebanon, and they dressed up in IDF uniforms. And on their way, they killed people. I mean, they killed people haphazardly, but they saw this street sweeper in Maalot. They didn't know where to go, but they saw a street sweeper, so they asked him, where's the closest school? And he told them the closest school was this Nativ Meir, and then they shot the guy, as a reward for telling that. So they came into the school at Nativ Meir. It says they got there at 5 in the morning, very early in the morning, and they were planning on waiting till the morning when the kids would actually come into the school and then take a bunch of children hostage. But they hear noises because the kids on the trip were talking. They were up till all hours of the night, and the kids were talking, and then they hear the noises. They realize that the children there's a group in the school, and they hit jackpot because here there's a whole group of people in the school. And so they took them all hostage in the building, and they were demanding the release of some other terrorists to be released instead of the children. I read somewhere that Israel agreed, but by the time they didn't get the news that Israel's agreeing because it went through Lebanon, and they didn't get the message, which was encoded, until past the deadline. And meanwhile, Israel also infiltrated this school to rescue them. But in the process, meanwhile, 25 children had been killed. terrible, terrible tragedy.
You didn't say that Maalot is on the border
Maalot is on the border of
with Lebanon.
with Lebanon. Okay, thank
Yeah.
you. I don't know, you know.
Oh, okay. Yes.
I just read the story. I didn't know. So yeah,
Okay, yeah, it's
it's on the border. So you know where it is. And how far is
Oh,
it from
yeah.
Sfat?
from Sfat, it is.
It is far. So it was a big trip.
Sfat is more on the east, and this is more on the west.
On the west.
Side of Israel. Northwest.
Northwest.
Yeah.
Okay. So after this terrible massacre happened, the Rebbe spoke about mezuzah. And when the rabbis in Sfat went to the homes of the children who were killed, they went to their homes to be menachem avel, to comfort them for their children who passed away. And they suggested that the mezuzot be checked. And they checked the mezuzot, and they were all, either there wasn't a mezuzah, or it was pasul, it was not kosher. So this is when the Rebbe came out and said, it's so important to have mezuzot. Now again, let me just preface this. The Rebbe was not saying they're punished because they didn't have mezuzot. The Rebbe was saying that when we have a mezuzah, it protects us. When we're in a state of danger, when we're in a state of something happening, the mezuzah has the power of protecting us. And a person who does not have that doesn't have this extra protection. And after that, the Rebbe went on to say a whole bunch of times all about mezuzot and how the mitzvah itself, there's a lot of mitzvah where the Torah tells us, you do this mitzvah, you'll get this reward. Here, it's not so much about the mitzvah and the reward of the mitzvah, but the mitzvah itself has the power of protection. The mitzvah itself is protective. And I remember when, I think it was when I was in high school already, they made a whole campaign. The best insurance policy is a mezuzah. It was like a whole big campaign. And there were people who were very religious Jews who were against it. And they were saying, how could you say a mezuzah, just put up a mezuzah for protection? And the Rebbe said, no, that's the point. The point of the mezuzah is that it protects. The mezuzah itself is for protection. And it's okay to put up a mezuzah just for the protection itself, not even for the fact that it's obviously we do a mitzvah, but to put it up just because you want the protection. So the mezuzot, I think now, especially when we're in the situation with the hostages in Eretz Yisrael and Israel, I think it's important, we know that all the Jewish people are connected, and what we do here protects other people. When we pray here, it helps. When we give tzedakah here, it helps. When we do our mitzvot here, it helps. Many of the officers, the generals in the army in Israel were saying, when we felt your prayers, we were there in Gaza and we felt your protection. So I think it's important now with the situation as it is to emphasize and to teach and to spread this fact that the mezuzah is something that protects us. And if you have not checked your mezuzah in a while, it's time to check. If you have only one, if you don't have mezuzot, put up more mezuzot. And the word is for mezuzah, by the way, is ukasavtem al mezuzot beitecha. You should write it on the doorposts of your home. Not al mezuzah, it's the doorpost. So it's nice to have it on the front door. It's great to have it on the front door, very important. But the mitzvah itself is actually on every doorpost. Every doorpost except for a bathroom or except for like a closet. But any room that's an actual room, this is a mitzvah to have a mezuzah. And if you haven't checked your mezuzot, it's time to check them to make sure that they are kosher. It's nice to have beautiful coverings, but if you just have simple coverings, that's fine. The main thing is the quality of the writing that's in the mezuzah, the words in the mezuzah, which are the words in this week's Torah portion. We write the words of the Shema that is in this week's Torah portion, and that is the words that we have on there. And if you look,
If anyone needs a mezuzah, we can get them, those people still try to collect from this.
excellent. Okay, now's a perfect time. Not only are you supporting the people in Israel, which is a mitzvah in itself, but you're also spiritually supporting in terms of what we all do together. So it's it's part of the akev, it's something that's not a hard thing to do. It just takes like 5 minutes to put it up, but it's something that we are bringing God into all areas of our life, into our homes, into all aspects of our home. And we're going to talk more about what the mezuzah is in terms of different parts of our home. But now would be a great time to do this. Now, in the mezuzah is the parchment, and on the parchment is the words of the Shema, which is the words that we've been saying, the Jewish people have been saying throughout millennia, all the times, words connecting us to God, words that give us a consciousness of God, that God is everywhere, God is here, God is protecting us. And on the outside of the mezuzah, after they roll it up, they also write, which is what you'll have on the mezuzah, the 3 letters, which is the words of God's name. Shin, Daled, Yud. Exactly. And that word is God's name. It's because Sha'omer die, that God said die, it's enough, the world is going to be. But the word Shin, Daled, Yud is also Shomer, Daltot, Yisrael. The one who watches the doors or the entrances of the Jewish people. Because the point of the mezuzah is that it watches us. God is watching us. And in fact, it says in the Talmud, this is, and this was, the Talmud talks about how, usually when you have a king, the king is on the inside of the palace, and it's the people, the guards, who are on the outside. With us, it's the opposite. God is on the outside. He's watching us. He's on the doorposts, and he's watching us, and we are in the inside. We're the people that are in the inside. And this is explaining the idea of Shomer Daltot Yisrael. God is watching the entrances, the doorposts of the Jewish people. Now, if we look at the word mezuzah, we have in it a mem, and then we have zuzah. Zayin Vav and Zayin Hey. What's Zu and Za? Him and her.
Zu v'zeh.
Zu v'zeh. Yeah, okay. So was correcting.
It's okay.
It's this and that, but it's masculine and feminine, right?
Yes,
Zu
is
is masculine, and Za is...
No,
the opposite. The opposite, okay.
The other way.
It's masculine and feminine, the 2 parts, masculine and feminine. So we have mem, which is the letter mem, and then we have zu and za, which is masculine and feminine. And this is really a hint to us, which is the idea of the mezuzah. It's a hint to us of the cosmic bride and the cosmic groom, the cosmic male, the cosmic masculine, and the cosmic feminine. When we talk about masculine and feminine qualities, the masculine is the giver and the feminine is the one that receives. The man biologically gives the seed and the woman receives it and creates from it something even more than what she was given. And this is the quality of masculine and feminine, the giving and receiving, the sun and the moon. The sun shines, the moon reflects the sun. The woman takes the seed and she creates from it something even more special, an actual human being. But we receive and then we create. So this masculine and feminine energies of this world, the cosmic room and the cosmic bride of this world is the cosmic room is God. And the cosmic bride, it says, is Knesset Yisrael, the Jewish people. We are God's bride. That's why we say, L'chadaydi likrat kala. We say this every Shabbat. Come meet the kala. We're talking about the Shabbat queen, and we're talking about Knesset Yisrael, the Jewish people. We are God's cosmic bride. So the mezuzah is reflecting the fact that we have mem, which we're going to talk about in a minute, the letter mem, and zu and za, the masculine and the feminine combination, the 2 of us, the woman and the man, the cosmic Jewish people and God, our connection and how we are connected. The mezuzah is that example of that. It's that symbol of how connected we are to God, how we are God's chosen people. And that's why God is Shomer Daltot Yisrael. He's protecting us and he's protecting his people. The mem, on the other hand, of the mezuzah refers to the number mem is 40, and it refers to Moshe going up to heaven for 40 days and 40 nights in order to receive the Torah, the written Torah. The oral Torah also starts with the letter mem. The Mishnah, it starts with the letter mem. The words in it start with mem and end with mem. So the letter mem is a reference to the Torah, which connects and binds and unifies the cosmic groom to the cosmic bride. The Torah and how all three are so intricately attached. God, the Jewish people, and the Torah, we're all one. It's one unit, one cohesive unit. And that's what the mezuzah is a symbol about, how that unity is so strong. It's like this three-pronged tie, this knot that unites us all and connects us all. And this is what we remember when we kiss the mezuzah or we pass the mezuzah and we acknowledge it. Now, if you look at the mezuzah, when you go into the room, this is actually coming out from the kitchen. But when you look at it, as you go into the door or when you go into the kitchen and you come into this room, the mezuzah is on which side of the door? The right side of the door. And right is associated with love. That's what right is associated with. So this brings us to this divine consciousness and God's love, how he's loving us, surrounding us with his love. And we're bringing that love into our homes and then into each and every room that we're in. And in the mezuzah, we write the words of the Shema. And the words of the Shema first starts off with, Shema Yisrael, listen, understand. Listen, the Jewish people, listen. Listen is referring to our minds. Listen, understand, comprehend what I'm saying. We then move into our hearts. It says, V'ahavta es Hashem, you should love God. We then move into our speech when we talk about Vishinantem levanecha, you should teach it to your children. First we understand that God is God. Then we bring, understanding gives birth to emotions, to feelings of love. Once we feel that love, we speak about it. We speak about our connection. We teach it to our children. We speak about it. We communicate it. It then goes into that you should bind it as tefillin on your hand. So it's talking about bringing that awareness from your mind into your heart, speaking about it with your mouth, and then bringing it into actions, onto your body. And then finally, the last thing is uksavtem al mezuzot, bringing it into our environment. So again, this is the progression of how we do things. We start with our mind. Once we understand something with our mind, it affects our heart. It makes us feel a certain affection, a certain love. Once we feel it, we understand and we feel, we speak about it, we communicate it, we speak to our children, we're excited about it. We then translate that into some kind of action, we bind it onto our hands, onto our body. And then finally, not only is it about us, but it's also about our surroundings, about our environment. We put it on our doorpost. We put the mezuzah on our doorpost to bring these ideas, this divine consciousness, not only into our minds and into ourselves, but into our environment and around us, into our circumstances. Now, the mitzvah, like we said, of mezuzah is not mezuzah, but uksavtem al mezuzot, to have it in each room of our home. And when you think about a room, let's talk about a room. There's different moods to each room. You know, you might be in the kitchen and you'll put on an apron because it's your work mode. That's where you're going to do your work. You're going to sit here on the couch in the living room and you'll throw off your shoes and you're going to lay down in your comfortable clothes and you're going to have this relaxation. You go into your bedroom, you're in your pajamas. You take off, you're off of your work clothes, you're laying down, you're sleeping, you're relaxing. Every room has a different mood. And when we put the mezuzah on every room of our home, we're saying there's all these different parts to us. There's the work self. You go into your study and you're doing your work. You're very focused on your work. There's the lounging part, there's the cooking part, there's so many aspects to our lives, but all these various aspects of our lives have one thing in common. And that one thing in common is that we're creating this God consciousness in all these areas of our lives. And it doesn't have to be a uniform way. We can express that God consciousness in different ways. In the kitchen, it might be one way. In the living room, it might be another. In the dining room, another. In the bedroom, another. In our study, another. In the basement, where we're doing our recreation, another. But all of them have some kind of consciousness of God. We're inviting God in to all areas of our lives, to all exercises of our lives, to all parts of our lives, to all aspects of their lives, which is what we were saying about in the word akev, that we're saying to God, we're inviting you into all areas of our home, all parts of ourselves, not just the head parts, not just the important parts, not just the biggie parts, but all areas. Every part of our life could express how our connection to God should be and how we feel that connection to God. Now, it's interesting, we've learned a few parshiot ago about Korach. Who remembers Korach, right? And when we did Korach, we said, Korach came to Moshe and he said, hold on a second. If I have a room that's full of Jewish books, full of Chumash, Torah, all these Jewish books, do I still need a mezuzah on that room? The room is already full with all these Torah scrolls. Do I still need a mezuzah on the door of that room? And Moshe said yes. And Korach made fun of it. And he's like, what are you saying? If I have already a room full of Torah scrolls, full of Torah books, why do I need a mezuzah even on that door? And the answer is that the mezuzah reminds us of two things. It reminds us, like we just said, that we bring God into all areas of our home, all the different aspects, the kitchen, the dining room, the basement, the study, the bedroom, every area we bring God into. But the mezuzah also reminds us it's not enough to just have it in the home. We put it on the front door of our house. We're saying Torah scrolls are beautiful, Torah books are beautiful in the home, and we want to fill our home with Torah books. But you know what? It's not only in the home. It's also when we go out of the home. It's also when we leave, when we go to the front door and we leave the home, we're taking that with us, that inspiration with us. We're taking those values with us. We're taking the courage to be a Jew with us. We're not just leaving it in the home, like they used to say, be a Jew in the home, and when you go out in the streets, you hide your Judaism. No, we're taking Judaism with us. We're taking who we are, identity, our courage, our pride with us no matter where we go. And that's the idea of the mezuzah also on the doorpost, that it's not just the doorpost, it's the doorpost to the outside. We're taking this beautiful environment that we created and we're also bringing it outside with us. And there was a very interesting story that was in 1927 that has to do with a mezuzah. That actually the Rebbe talks about when he speaks about these concepts of mezuzah, that shows us how we can take our Jewish pride no matter where we are. And that story takes place in Bolshevik Russia with the previous Lubavitcher Rebbe, the sixth Lubavitcher Rebbe, Rabbi Yosef Yitzchak, not the one that we had in our times, but the one preceding the Lubavitcher Rebbe. And he was living in Stalin, in terrible Russia, where, communist Russia, where you couldn't teach Judaism. You were arrested for anything that you did in Judaism. I know my mother, who lived in Russia after that, but she tells me all these stories of how you had to hide your Judaism. There was no being openly Jewish, because then you'd be totally put into prison because of it. And she says how she had a piano in her home, and there was always she had a Jewish teacher, a Jewish tutor who would teach her Torah. And as soon as they heard a knock, though, on the door, right away they would cover the books and they would take out all the music books, and she would pretend that they were playing music. Every week on Shabbat, She would go to school with every time a different excuse. Either there would be a bandage on her hand that she couldn't write, or sometimes she couldn't go to school because she'd have a doctor's note. Always some kind of excuse, because you couldn't openly keep Judaism. So in the time period of the Frierdiker Rebbe, of the previous Rebbe, the sixth Lubavitcher Rebbe, he openly went against this idea of not, he knew that the future of Judaism is with the children, and he created a whole network of schools, and he called together a group of Hasidim where he assigned to each one a different part of Russia that they would take care of to teach the Jews that were there to teach the children, and to create a whole underground educational system for the children, because how in the world would Judaism continue if not with knowledge and without teaching them about Judaism? So, of course, he was doing all this activity, and the communist Russians couldn't stand it. So he was arrested, and he was taken to a prison on Spalerno Street for brutal interrogation. He writes a whole memoir all about his experiences there, which is a fascinating memoir, and you could read all about, what it means to really be strong, and what it means to really stand up in the face of such adversity. And the terrible beatings and brutality that he was subjected to is beyond. But he went in with the feeling, like, I'm going in with the feeling that I'm not submitting to them. I'm going to show them that I am not afraid of them, and I'm not submitting to them. And in fact, when he was taken in, they showed him, at one point, the interrogator showed him his gun. He says, "Do you know what this is? Like, you better answer me." And he says, "Do you think I'm afraid of that gun? That gun is for people that have one world and many gods. I, on the other hand, have one God and two worlds, the world of this world and the world of the afterlife. So someone like me is not afraid of that gun." And in this way, he made sure to stand very firm to show them, I'm not afraid of what you're trying to do to me, because fear is the thing that really, when we show our fear, you see this in Israel, right today, nowadays we're so scared of any kind of attack. And what are the people in Israel doing? They're living their lives as if they're normal, as if just regular. And they're out in the streets, and they're just trying to live as much as possible a normal existence. When we were expecting the attack from Iran any day, my son was there in Israel. He was volunteering on a mission there, and to be honest, I was nervous. I wanted him to be home already, and I'm like, "What's the mood there?" Like, I was hoping, like, "Come back already," And he shows me this clip of in the shuk, and all the Israelis are singing and dancing, and it was incredible to see that kind of courage. We show that even in the face of terror, we are strong and we are not afraid. And this is what the Frierdiker Rebbe was trying to do in that prison. So he went in speaking Yiddish. He spoke Russian perfectly, but he spoke Yiddish to show them, I'm only speaking Yiddish. And when he came in, he said, "This is the first place that I'm going into where people don't stand up for me," because of course he was a respected individual. Wherever he went, people stood up for him. He says, "This is the first place that people are not respecting me and standing up for me," again to show like who he was. And they said, "Do you know where you are? Like, you're talking like that? Do you even know where you are?" He says, "Of course I know where I am. I'm in a place that you cannot put a mezuzah. And the places that you can't put, like a barn and a bathroom. Those are the places where you can't put a mezuzah. A bathroom, we don't put a mezuzah because it's not respectful. The mezuzah has God's name on it. And a barn is also not respectful, and it's not a place where people live. So a mezuzah is only put in a place where people live. And a prison as well has that law that we don't put a mezuzah there, because it's not where anyone wants to live, in a prison, right? So the Lubavitcher Rebbe writes about what his father-in-law, the previous Rebbe, said. He says, "Why did he give that example about the mezuzah?" Like, why is, of all places, why is he saying this is not a place where you put a mezuzah? And he was saying that there's two ways that we can create an attachment to something. We can create an attachment to the mitzvah of mezuzah by talking about putting a mezuzah, or by actually putting up the mezuzah, by creating that positive attachment to it. And then there's a negative attachment, a negative connection that we can create to mezuzah by saying this isn't a place where a mezuzah belongs. This isn't a place where it's supposed to be doing. So what are we accomplishing by saying this? We're actually saying, I'm fulfilling God's, whoa, you okay? Oh. We're saying I'm fulfilling God's will either by putting up the mezuzah, or I'm fulfilling God's will by not putting up a mezuzah. Like when we don't put it up on the bathroom, we're fulfilling God's will about not putting up a mezuzah. We're connecting ourselves to the mitzvah of mezuzah by not putting it up. And the Rebbe, in this case, says that the previous Rebbe was trying to say, I am connected to the mitzvah of mezuzah now, here in prison, by not having a mezuzah here, by being in a place where I cannot put up the mezuzah. And by talking like this, he was trying to invoke the protection of the mezuzah, because the mitzvah of mezuzah creates this protection for us, and he was connecting himself to the laws of mezuzah in order to create this protection for him by not putting up the mezuzah, because it's a place where God does not want it. And what we can learn from this is that if in the hell of Salerno prison, this prison of, where there was unbelievable brutality and killings, if in such a place we can stand proud and have the courage to be a Jew who is connected to God and connected to Torah, and stand proud with that knowledge and with that connection, and bring God even into such a place, then when we're not in a place like Salerno prison, when we're not in communist Russia, when we're here in Pomona or in New City or wherever we are, how much more so can we stand proud and courageous to be Jews and bring God into all aspects of our lives. And that really is the message of the mezuzah, how we bring God and bring God's consciousness into all areas of our lives. And another story, one last story is told of a man whose name is Onkelos. And Onkelos was actually a convert to Judaism. He was a nephew of the Roman Emperor Titus, who actually was responsible for the destruction of the temple. So this Onkelos was Titus's nephew, and he converted to Judaism. So his uncle Titus, the Roman emperor, was terribly ashamed that his nephew is converting to Judaism. Here he's trying to destroy the Jewish people, destroy the Beit HaMikdash, and his own nephew had converted to Judaism. So Titus, the emperor in Rome, sent messengers to Israel where Onkelos was in order to bring him back and in order to convince him to come back. And as he sent messengers, every messenger that he sent first a group of people, a delegation of people to convince him. And Onkelos started talking to them, and he was very smart in how he spoke to them. And he persuaded the group who came to bring him back to also convert to Judaism. He showed them the beauty of Judaism, and they too converted to Judaism. So Titus saw this, and he sent another group, and it kept happening. The same group also converted. So what did he do? He sent another group, another delegation, and he said, this time, don't talk to him. Just bring him. Don't say a word to him, because, the power of his persuasion. I don't want him to persuade you. Don't say a word to him. And so they didn't. They were just ready. They were bringing him off. And as Onkelos left his home, he didn't say anything because they weren't talking to him, he kissed the mezuzah on the door. And they were bewildered. Why is he kissing a mezuzah? So they asked him, why are you doing that? So he started to explain to them what the point of the mezuzah is, and he explained to them what we said before, that unlike natural, usual kings, mortal kings, what does a mortal king have? A mortal king or a mortal emperor has all the people, all his guards protecting him on the outside of his palace. But the king of the Jewish people is on the outside. They're sleeping comfortably in their beds, and God is watching them on the outside, making sure that nothing is going to happen. That's how we believe in God. That's what our God is. That's the God of kindness. That's the God of love. That's the God that protects us and that watches over us. And when they heard this, they were so impressed that they too converted to Judaism. So,
He was the original Tony Robbins.
yeah, yes, exactly. On a personal note, I want to share with you that when my oldest son he's now in his 30s, when he was a little boy, when he was maybe 2 years old, he kept on getting stomach viruses, one virus after another, and he was like, this little pudgy kid was losing weight and getting thinner and thinner because he kept getting one virus after another. And we were concerned because it would happen for quite a period of time. We took him to our pediatrician, and he said, "I'm sorry, but it's just bad luck. Like, there's nothing you can do. A stomach virus is nothing you can even give them. He just keeps on getting the same stomach virus." At the time, I was pregnant with another kid, and my husband had just broken his leg. So here we have my son, here we have my husband. I'm like, okay. I said to my husband, it's time to check the mezuzahs. Okay, this is what we do. When things aren't going well in your life, the first thing that the Rebbe would always say is there's protection from the mezuzah. So check your mezuzahs. It's an easy thing. It's a simple thing to do. Check the mezuzot to make sure. And when we checked the mezuzah, we took down all the mezuzot, so I don't know which door it was actually on, but the word v'achalta, it says v'achalta v'savata, you will eat and you will be satisfied. The word v'achalta, and you will eat, had the lamed of the word v'achalta, you will eat, the leg of the lamed was broken off. And when we fixed the leg of the lamed of the word you will eat, my son's stomach virus miraculously stopped coming. So that's just my own personal story of how you see, and there's so many stories of how we see that the mezuzot are really shomer daltot Yisrael. They are the ones that protect the doors of the Jewish people. And we spoke about the word mezuzah. One last point is we said it was the mem and zu and za. It's the connection of the Jewish people. It shows our unity. It shows how we are one, the cosmic bride, the cosmic groom. The word, the letter mem that's at the beginning, we said refers to Torah, but it also refers to Mashiach. And this is how we bring Mashiach to our consciousness. This is how we bring Mashiach to our world. The first redemption that the Jewish people had was the redemption in Egypt. And what did they put? What's Pesach? What did we put on all our doorposts? We put blood. We put blood on the doorposts, on the mezuzot.
That's why we have the mezuzah.
That's why. And now we have mezuzah on the same idea of protection, but this is a parchment that we put with God's message and God, the words of the Torah. We put that on our doorposts, giving us that protection. So the first exile from Egypt was through the doorposts. Now the last redemption that we're anticipating and hoping for any day, and we're feeling it in the air. We're feeling those ikvot Mashiach, those footsteps of Mashiach. We feel it. We feel the tremors. That is going to as well happen. And it will be through those, like we said, those little things that we do, those heals that we do. And that includes bringing God consciousness into all areas of our lives, including by putting mezuzot on all the doors of our home, bringing that energy, that life force, that connection that we have to God into all aspects of our lives. And with that, we should have a wonderful, wonderful week.